Hello everyone and welcome back to another Throwback Thursday. Today I am playing what has quickly become one of my favorite throwbacks. It's one of the only games we've thrown back to several times, which is the Middle-earth CCG. This is originally made by a company called Iron Crown Enterprises, ICE for short, in the mid-90s, and we streamed it middle of last year when we started doing the throwbacks. And it took us like 5 or 6 hours to make our way through a single game of this, but there was just something, some quality about the game that was really appealing. Somewhere between the art and the lore and the map. You'll see the map in front of me. I'll eventually switch to the top-down camera so you can see it. But there's just something about this game. So I had an opportunity a couple times when Steven was gone, which he is gone this week as well, to basically was looking for a throwback I could play solo. I had seen a lot of different rules variants for the Middle-earth CCG that were solo, including the Arda format. And they were all, I think, good and fun. There's actually a book I have here. I love that they do this, and I mention it every time. But it reminds me of the strategy guides for video games in the 90s. It's just a book. It has a bunch of tips and rules and stuff, but it also has scenarios in the back. And so those scenarios are actually a great way to play solo, but they set up very specific ways to play the game. You know, like you're specifically trying to destroy the ring or go steal something from Smaug, that kind of a deal. So it's very tailored to us one instance. What I was interested in, and I last time on stream, I did a deck building for what's called a dunk deck to destroy the One Ring. Before that, I actually did a session where I built the deck and played a solo variant of the game that I came up with that I call open world solo mode, because the idea of it was so that I could basically create a Middle-earth map and create a system that I could play against that would sort of let me explore Middle-earth at my own pace and do what I want to do. And if possible, creating a system that could do that would somewhat mimic playing against opponents. That way I could test decks. We've been in isolation since 2020. We're streaming 5 days a week, so I don't have a lot of time to play this game outside of when we're playing it live. We have a lot of games we want to throw back to. So it's where this kind of inspiration for this came from. I linked to it in the chat earlier. There's a blog that posts on the website that has all those rules in it. But the short version is I created a unique deck for every site path type. So like Wilderness is one deck, and I have those sleeved in green over here. And these are basically cards, hazard cards I could run into if I were in the wilderness. And I'll walk through how that works in a minute. But it sort of lets me just kind of play in an open world environment, Middle-earth CCG. So if you're new to the game, feel free to ask questions. We've done several streams at this point that kind of cover some more of the basics of the game. I won't be diving fully into like breakdown, here's how a turn works. Although I will have to wade through how to play myself. It's a pretty dense game. And so I find myself remembering a lot of the way the game functions when I start playing, but also I'm going to have to look some stuff up. So if you are familiar with the game and you know how the rules work, feel free to pipe up if I'm getting something wrong or if I have a question. But if you have a question, feel free to ask. Also, it's not limited Middle-earth CCG. I'm just going to be hanging out. Steven's gone. I'm streaming solo. This is going to be a pretty laid-back time, and I'll be looking up rules and stuff. So feel free to ask stuff in the chat. It doesn't have to be related to Middle-earth CCG, and I would be happy to answer those questions and interact. There were some questions coming through I do want to get to, trying to catch up with chat. And then we'll go from there. Ryan Roper on saying he should be able to answer questions. Ryan, you're very helpful. Commonly, Ryan is around for the rulings on Flesh and Blood, but knowing you can answer questions here is super, super helpful. Freaking Camper is saying if you can't answer because it's about business, I understand. I saw your question earlier. I'll definitely address it. He's saying he has a couple questions regarding LCG delays and Ashes Reborn, expected time of arrival on those. So we're just not getting word. We got word last week that the originally scheduled releases that were supposed to come out tomorrow, all the LCG related ones. So I think there's a Arkham pack, a Marvel Champions pack, and a L5R pack had been delayed. We didn't have any concrete info, and so I believe we were trying to get that today before we reached out to subscribers to kind of let everyone know here's what's happening. I expect that release to be imminent, so the next couple weeks. Once we have official word, we're going to be putting out an email to all the people that were charged. Typically, subscriptions get charged 2 weeks before something releases. We actually charged a little bit early this time because that 2-week time frame would have been on Christmas. Beyond that being a holiday and not wanting to have my staff handling that during that time. If anyone fails a charge at some point with a subscription, you'll get an email notice, and you have essentially 72 hours from that point to fix whatever was wrong with your payment, whether it's expiration, wrong account, wrong address, whatever it is. And as long as you get it fixed, you get charged, everything's normal. If you don't fix it in that time, your subscription just automatically gets canceled. We you basically exit the queue. And if you miss that, you end up not getting that product, and it's not an easy way for us to basically put you back into the system and get you the product smoothly. So we wanted to make sure those notices were going out in a time frame when people were likely to see them. So charging on Christmas wasn't appealing. So we charged a little bit early, which is happens from time to time. And then on top of that, they got pushed back. So it's just kind of a weird situation. But yeah, if you have any more questions, I'm happy to understand or answer what I can. Ozone player saying, totally unrelated to today's topic, but I can only buy one product or game. Which one do you pick, Imperial Assault or Legion? That's a good question. So they're very different experiences. Legion is primarily a campaign-driven, cooperative, storytelling Star Wars game. And then Legion is a Star Wars miniatures war game. So it's very much head-to-head. They have the standard, standard fights, which are on a 6x3 board. That's 6 feet by 3 feet. It's a large board. And then they have skirmish, which is a 3x3. So if you're into wargaming and assembly and painting and all that kind of stuff, I think Legion's a great game that has a ton of content, and it has a lot of content continuing to come out for that game. Whereas Imperial Assault, at least as far as we've seen for the past several years, is complete. So they did the expansions they did. It is what it is. There's not a lot of movement happening with that game, but it's a phenomenal game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. We've actually talked about streaming through a campaign of that at some point. But it's also on the upside, it's pre-assembled. So all the models that come with it, they're not painted, but at least there's no assembly required. So I think both are great games. It just depends on what you're after. Freaking Camper saying Ashes Reborn ETA. So according to the Plaid Hat announcement, which is we got the same information, current expectation is mid to late February. So if you're a subscriber, you'll probably get charged mid-February, and then we'll get that out to subscribers basically as soon as is feasible. Aaron Edge saying, I'm feeling quarantined by redesigning old games. Interesting. What games are you working on? We definitely, as we've been doing these throwbacks, you start seeing various things that you think older games were getting right or wrong, or what they may be doing ahead of the curve. And there's definitely some tweaks that you can make to some of these older games to I think, bring them in line. And one thing I was thinking about for this game, Middle Earth CCG, before the stream even started, was one of the kind of quirky rules to me is that you represent a wizard in the game, and you can actually play that wizard as a card. So like this deck has Gandalf in it, but you don't start with Gandalf in play. And it seems kind of like I could wax poetic on this topic, but in the Conquest LCG, each warlord basically had a signature card that was a limit 1 per deck. And they were very powerful, and the argument from the design team, I think, was like, they're powerful, so we're going to limit it to 1, so you don't always get it. And that is a pretty bad way to balance something, because what it means is that games where I get it and you don't, I have a distinct advantage. Games where you get your one of and I don't, you have a distinct advantage. But then games where neither of us get it or both of us get it are actually good. And so same here, it makes me kind of curious. Like, we both can draw a wizard, and the wizard is pretty powerful. Like if Gandalf pops on the screen, you'll see 10 on his direct influence. So he literally just adds 10 to the total amount you can have on the board. And that's crazy. That's a lot. And so like if you hit your wizard and your opponent doesn't for a while, I feel like that's a distinct disadvantage. But Cecily. And there's a ton of stuff that could also be cleaned up about this game. But in some instances, like I look at like one of my starting characters is Glorfindel. And if you actually look at his card and break it down, he's worth 3 points, top left. He costs 8, that with the white like shape of a head behind it. That's how much he costs to be in play. You can start the game with 20 in play. And then he's got the hand, which is his influence of 2. Which he can use to basically control their characters without them counting against your total brain. But then hit the bottom left, you see the stats is an 8-9. So that's his prowess, which is kind of this fighting stat in his body, which is how hard he is to actually hit / damage. Then you look at his text, though, and it's like unique, +1 direct influence against elves. So he's a 3 direct influence when there's an elf around. And that's what he does. So he's just, literally 8-9 is kind of his stat. That's what really matters here. So in that way, this game, I really think it's, looking through all the characters, it's surprising how simple the characters actually are compared to how complex character cards in modern games actually are. A lot of times the characters they're trying to make as a like super special thing that you do in the game. And that is not where the complexity comes in the Middle Earth CCG. So they do it right there, but then a lot of times I'll be reading a card and it's like kind of like reading a book. Like the One Ring is a great example of this. It's like it's got so much going on. By the time you get to the end of it, you might need to restart and kind of figure out what it's saying. But that's also part of the allure of the game. So it reminds me of how I feel when I'm reading Lord of the Rings, when I'm playing this game, and I think intentional. So I enjoy that. PD asking if I want to be famous on Instagram. I don't, but you're going to be famous on our block list. All right, some more questions before I switch to the camera down and get going from there. Freaking Camper saying AT-AT, I think I have to be assembled, but that's about it. I don't think there was an AT-AT for the Star Wars Legion. A.N. saying, Happy New Year, folks. Happy New Year, welcome. Aaron A. saying, I've redesigned and updated Raw Deal. I could share a link to Google Drive on Discord if anyone is interested. Yeah, please do. That's a game I would love to see get modernized. I'm curious what you did there. Ozum saying, thanks for the info. My son and I are looking at getting into a game and just can't decide. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Legion has the hobby element, so you be prepared for that. KH McClure, hey Zach, thanks for streaming this week. Excited to see you slam a jam of the Precious. Yeah, we'll see. I think that's a really good test of this system, the solo mode that I designed. So we'll see if it holds up. It could be totally unexciting, or I could get totally crushed, or it could be too easy. I don't know. Litany says, I love when I Google Middle Earth CCG. You guys are the top 2 videos. Maybe that's just my curated results, but maybe you guys are just the best. Linty, you know, I mean, the interesting thing about that is this game came out well before YouTube existed, right? And even as far as 5 or 6 years ago, our ability to stream or create content, just based on technology, was way worse. And so when these old games that we play and love, a lot of them that we used to play growing up, there's not a lot of content out there, even in HD, let alone like in high quality with decent audio, with the ability like us having the cards popping up. So it's really cool the number of people we've heard from. They're like, I got interested in this game 20 years after it came out, and I'm learning how to play through this video that you guys did. So it's one of my favorite things about being able to do some of these throwbacks. There's just not a lot of content out there for a lot of these games. So, you know, for the people that happen to be interested in this specific 25-year-old game, hopefully it's pretty helpful. Mike Cook saying the 1 copy of a card per deck, because it's powerful, gave old L5R problems as well. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Ryan Roper, one person getting their wizard out when the other doesn't can be strong, but it also limits you. If you lose your wizard, you lose. And you have to bring new characters in with your wizard when you use general influence. Yeah, that's true. Brian saying, I find the Middle Earth CCG is a literary card game. Aaron saying, currently I'm playing around with taking the Lord of the Rings TCG system, updating it and streamlining it, and putting an 80s slasher skin on it. So you choose a slasher in a group of teens. That's interesting. I think that system's actually really good. Where the cart got off the road on that game, I think, mostly was development. Looking back, I've recently been getting boxes of that game so that I can build some decks and whatnot. And the stream we did of it, we'll have to stream it again, because we were streaming with alternate ring bearers, which I never had done. My entire time playing was that first 9 or 10 sets where Frodo was your ring bearer, which I think I get why they wanted to explore new territory, but at the same time, I think it was the development, not the design, that was a problem there. Linty says, yeah, that's great. Speaking of 20 years ago, the Fellowship of the Ring movie came out in 2001. I feel so old. Yeah, I don't feel young. I don't feel super old yet, but I also am not feeling young these days. Kevin saying, I actually found your channel a few months back because I watched your Lord of the Rings TCG video and have been watching your channel ever since. Kevin, that's amazing to hear. So do you play anything else that we've been streaming, or do you just hang out and watch the streams? I'm really curious. Brandon saying, good to be able to check out the stream this week. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. I'm looking for literally any chance. When Steven's gone, it's high odds that Middle Earth CCG is going to be the game that's going to get throwbacked to. There's a couple others, but there's not that many throwback games that are like solo ready. So, you know, this is probably going to be a recurring theme on the show. I have thought about doing some deck building streams for some of my favorite throwbacks, right? Lord of the Rings TCG being one, Star Wars TCG, Star Wars CCG. Some of those deck building processes are, Star Wars CCG is crazy. So we'll see. But at the moment, Miller CCG is the thing I lean towards when I have a chance. Kevin's saying, you actually got me into Flesh and Blood, but I just generally love watching you guys play games. Well, hey, that's really cool to hear. This year streaming, or this past year, I guess it's not 2020 anymore, hearing from people who just like hanging out and watching the games. I mean, that was a big part of why we started streaming. And we knew people would be isolated, stuck at home, and not getting to play games as much. So it's really cool to see that panning out. Ryan Roper saying, I'd watch a Star Wars CCG deck building stream. It's the Star Wars CCG, that there is a game with Moxie. This game has Moxie, another CCG, but that also is another one of those just like crazy. Aaron H. seconding the Star Wars CCG stream idea. So I've also been collecting boxes of that game. I talked a while ago about doing a mini series where Steve and I basically start by opening a box of the first set, building decks, opening a box of the second set, building or modifying decks, and kind of continuing on to basically get the experience from the start of that game to later on in the game. Because the decks that I have currently, which was the Death Star run and the Death Star deck, they're using a lot of the tools from the entire saga of the game. And like a lot of games back then, they kind of kept adding layers of complexity set after set after set. So I would be very curious. I didn't really get the experience as growing up where I got to play with the very minimal like first set and then going from there. So that's something I'm interested in doing just personally to understand how that game evolved. Andre saying, I've been obsessed with the Star Wars TCG thanks to you guys. I had the game since the 2000s, but had a lot of animosity towards it being a CCG player. Now being a more mature player, it's so good. Yeah, I think that game took a lot of heat because Wizards got the license and kind of killed the CCG from Decipher because they got the license. And a lot of the CCG players, which is a very popular game from what I understand, were not pleased about that, so they were not having the Star Wars TCG, and the Star Wars TCG had a lot of prequel stuff up front, had a bunch of dice, but that's designed by Richard Garfield, who also designed Magic and Keyforge, among other games, and Netrunner, and I think that is a amazing system. I think what he did there was really, it's such a great game, so glad to hear that we got you to give that game a second look. David saying, morning, you might end up loving the CCG more than the TCG if you go down that route. I don't think that's true. They're very different. They're very different experiences. I think the TCG is the kind of game I could jam out, like I could play for hours on end. The CCG is like, I want to play a game of it occasionally, and it's a story that I'm telling. It's much more exhaustive, right? It reminds me more of the Middle Earth CCG where you're doing a ton of reading. But, there's things about both games, I think, in modern times I would definitely make some adjustments. So you never know. You never know what we'll do. Rise of the Myth saying, Star Wars had a lot of drama, ... I'm so shocked. Yeah, I know. I wasn't really privy to it because I was too young when the CCG was around. And then I was, I was in my early teens when the TCG came out. I didn't really know there was animosity or how that had gone. But then would learn quickly that was the case. Paul saying, yeah, Star Wars CCG was my first entry into the hobby. We bought boxes of packs. Once Wizards killed it, there was no considering their game for me. Totally understand that. I mean, I totally get it. When Wizards basically just walked away from the TCG back in 2005, 2006-ish, that time frame, I was not happy. I was not happy with how they handled the end of that, what they did. So I was burnt for a while on Wizards and just Star Wars in general. I was very frustrated at that point. All right, I'm going to keep answering questions in the chat. Please keep them coming. That's a half of the fun of being here. Outside playing the game is getting to talk with everyone here, especially while Steven's gone. Definitely been a weird week. Just holidays were weird because of isolation and small. Like we had very, very small gatherings with the same my brother and his wife. So we're playing it really safe, but not stream for a couple weeks is weird. But then also even being here this week, mostly alone. Most people here working from home. Definitely strange. It's strange times. Davis Stenbeck, I'll read this before I go hit the button. Wonderful to see another video from Middle-earth CCG. Really helps keep up the spirits as the UK is going into another round of lockdown. Middle-earth CCG rocks. Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you're excited to be here. Russell, we'll get to that question. All right, if you guys could tell me, how does the table shot look? Had to adjust the angle to make it reasonable to get the map on screen and have some room over here for cards so that they can be seen and whatnot. But I just want to make sure it seems in focus and that everything looks and sounds good. We had some weird production stuff too. I'm not the most technologically inclined person. Depends on the tech, I guess. And so if anything seems off, let me know and I'll see if I can't fix it. Russell saying, how'd you like the cameo at the end of The Mandalorian? I don't know. Are we still in spoiler range? It's been weeks. How have you not seen it on the internet or somehow? I won't say it, but if you have seen it, you will know what I'm talking about. I thought it was good. It was fun. I think The Mandalorian is a phenomenal show. The second season was fantastic. I think that the specific person that I think you're referring to makes sense. It's fine. I would be okay if I never saw that family ever again, or not ever again. I want very minimal interaction there. I'm kind of over it. So I would have taken any number of characters that it could have been, and it was fine. I think for people that, specifically people that didn't like Last Jedi, that was like a very helpful, positive thing for them to really rekindle their passion for Star Wars. So if it made them happy, it didn't bother me. I thought it was cool to see. But I think the whole season, the other characters like Ahsoka were way more exciting to me to see. So super pumped about the future of that show, though. Kevin's saying, I believe you answered this in yesterday's stream, but were there going to be Flesh and Blood subscriptions opening up? Quite possible. I would hop on the wait list on the website, and you'll get an email as soon as we have more. If we have more, there's some things to work out on that end of things. But if they become available, they'll probably be available in the next 30 to 45 days, and you would get an email on the wait list as soon as they're back in. Brandon saying, Wizards made me mad about the Transformers game. See, I'm curious why that's the case. I felt like they handled that at least way better than they handled the Star Wars TCG. If you weren't here for that throwback stream, the short version is they previewed a set, got people excited, had the World Championship at Gen Con, and then after that Gen Con never addressed or said anything about the game ever again, never updated the website for that game ever again, just absolute silence. That was the end of that game. We didn't know if another set was coming, if or when. And this is back earlier in the days of the internet when it wasn't I mean, they were posting articles and stuff, but like it was not necessarily uncommon to, like, 1 week it's like, the set's coming out next week, and then the stores start getting it and you're doing your thing. So that was pretty brutal. But with Transformers, they at least posted, hey, this game's ending, which is, in my mind, a step in the right direction. Rise of Myth saying, I like Decipher as a company. Sad the company died because of someone robbing it. Yeah, I mean, it's such an unfortunate tale. There was apparently, there's a term for this. When you're basically stealing money from a company by cooking the books and taking money out or whatever. So that's unfortunate. And Decipher made some incredible games. And I remember them trying to come back. I think it was called Fight Club was the name of the game they were trying to do. And it was this really weird, like the way they were trying to release that model. But yeah, it was definitely sad to see. Thanks for all the feedback. Chris, David, Kevin, Resume saying about the board. I'm glad that it looks good. Michael saying Mandalorian may have reignited my love for the Star Wars franchise. Yeah, I mean, after Rise of Skywalker, I was not doing so hot on Star Wars. That's actually what led me to the Middle-earth CCG. I got on Lord of the Rings kick. I started reading the books again, and then I saw the challenge decks for this happen. And I had seen this game over and over at Gen Con and heard it talked about very positively. But I was like, I'll buy it and like check it out, this old game. Because up to that point, I'd also been collecting Star Wars CCG, get into that. And then Rise of Skywalker just, it was not my cup of tea. But Mandalorian, thankfully, Mandalorian and the Clone Wars season finishing out were really helpful for me. Brandon Light saying not a tech person in quotes. We learned that when you got a new laptop. That is funny. And KH McClure quoting us, which is got him. Rise of Myths. I liked Last Jedi. The last movie killed Star Wars for me. Yeah, I feel ya. Bruno, is there any good decks with the blue wizards? Blue wizards? What do you mean by blue wizards? Like Palando and stuff? Andrew Hendricks saying, trying to decide, should I get an X-Wing, Armada, or Legion? It seems like Armada has slowed down. I mean, part of that is that there's only so many capital ships in that galaxy, and there's not enough new ones being invented fast enough for them to really print over and over. Same with X-Wing, right? You get to a certain point where you just have all the ships. Legion, however, is, I think, going to expand for quite some time. They have a ton of characters. There's always new characters being added, new troopers and stuff. So I think they will have an easier time continue to expand than any of the other 3 games, if that matters to you. Ryan Rober saying, very sad that Transformers ended. It's such a great casual competitive game. Playing it is like taking a break from other games. Embezzlement, that is the right word from earlier. Yeah, I think Transformers is a great game. The Blitz format for that, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen happen in a game. Andre saying Ponzi. So Ponzi is when I basically, you give me money to invest in my business, and I use that money, and then I raise money from someone else to basically make it look like I'm making money to pay you whatever, dividends, profit. And you just keep basically using the next person's money to make more money and also pay off people historically. So you're not really running a business or generating revenue or profit or whatever. You're just, it's a Ponzi scheme. It stacks on itself. All right, so if you have played this game, this will make a lot of sense. And if you haven't, well, hopefully osmosis works. So, a few things. I'm going to use these miniatures from a game that we play called Skytear. Played it yesterday on stream. They're painted. And I'm going to use these to represent where my companies are. That said, people earlier were talking about various miniatures you can use for this game. I actually have bought some of the GW Lord of the Rings miniatures almost explicitly for that purpose. Some of the characters to paint so that you can have like Gandalf actually hopping around the map and stuff. So that'll be fun whenever I finally get to that. But basically, I have this group, these characters. My starting characters, I'll just run them down really quick, give people some context. I have Glorfindel. He's my big bad. He costs 8 of my 20 influence. He has 2 direct influence. And he has 8-9 stats in the bottom corner. When we get to some other characters soon, you'll see why that's so significant. He also gets +1 direct influence against elves. So my second character is Annalina. And she, you'll look under her art, it has a little scout/sage elf text. So she's an elf. You'll note her, I don't know what the name of the stat is. the brain stat is a 3. So Glorfindel, who gets +1 influence against elves, normally has a 2 on the hand, which is an influence. But it's a 3 against elves. So Annalina is basically going to start with Glorfindel, and he's going to directly influence her so that her 3 ultimately doesn't count against my 20. It does in terms of how many I get to start with, but it won't count starting on the first turn, basically. Then we have Sam Gamgee, my ring bearer assistant. He costs 4, so that puts me at 15. He's got 0 direct influence himself. See, he has a 1/9 on the bottom left corner, so 1 being his prowess. He's not a very good fighter, but he is really hardy, so he's hard to hit. He's a 9. His ability says, unless he is one of your starting characters, which he is, so we'll ignore that. And then his final bit of text here says, all of his corruption checks are modified by a +3. You'll note on the bottom right of his card, there's a +3. And corruption checks are what happen. If you notice the title of this video, it's I'm trying to dunk the ring. So we'll go ahead and pull up the one ring and just read that so we all remember what we're doing here. The one ring, top left stat here is a 6 in a box. So that's an item. The box means it's an item. The 6 is how many points it's worth when it's in play. When you're playing a standard game, a few differences. Normally you would have your good guy cards in a deck with your hazards, and you would basically be playing hazards to slow down and limit your opponent. And the points is how you win the game. So at some point, the Council of Elrond gets called, and they decide which wizard is like better influence in Middle Earth and is going to lead the armies against Sauron or whatever. And And so whoever has more points at that point wins the game. So the ring is worth 6, which is good. That's a lot of points. And most of the games I've seen, you're aiming for like 25 or 30, depending on how many decks you're playing, which is a totally different topic. But effectively, it's worth 6. It has this hand with a +5 on it. That means whoever has the ring gets +5 direct influence, which can be really powerful. It's unique. The one ring, it's playable only with a gold ring, and after a test indicates the one ring. So if we look at a precious gold ring, and I just realized I need 2 d6s. Let's just grab this. A precious gold ring says, discard precious gold ring when tested. If tested, make a roll to determine which ring may be immediately played. So I would roll 2 d6s. That's a 9. And if we look at the stats below, basically it says the one ring is a 10, 11, or 12 plus. So it wouldn't be able to turn into the one ring. A dwarven ring is an 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. So it could be a dwarven ring. A magic ring is 1 to 5, and a lesser ring can be any result. So technically I would make this roll, I would fail. This precious ring would have been discarded. But if I succeeded, let's say I got an 11, I discard the ring, and now I can actually play the one ring. That's what that means. It also gives, you'll see the bottom left, it has that +5, +5. So it gives +5 prowess and +5 body. Both of those with a max of 10. So if it's on Sam as an example, Sam Gamgee, it would give him +5 direct influence, and it would make his prowess a 6, but his body would cap out at 10. And then continue reading. Bear may make a corruption check modified by a -2 to cancel a strike. This does not work against undead and Nazgul strikes. So you wear the ring, you can't be hit unless, of course, it's an undead or a Nazgul, because they can see in the whatever realm that is. And it says +1 corruption point to every character in the bearer's company. So a company is a group of characters. Let's say all my characters were together, and Frodo had the ring. So if he did, all of them get +1 to their corruption points. And so basically what's going to ultimately happen, if we look at Frodo, he's my main character, of course. He costs 5, which puts me at 20 total, and he's got 1 direct influence. He's unique. He's a 1/9, just like Sam. He has the same text where he can only be brought into play at his home site. His corruption checks are +4, unlike Sam, who's a +3. So Frodo is the best at corruption checks. And if we have to make a corruption check, and there's various hazard cards that'll make me make a corruption check, and even how I'm going to try to win the game is going to have me make a corruption check. But Frodo gets to add 4 to his corruption check. So if I rolled, a 7, I'd add 4, now I'm at 11. And you'll notice on the one ring, Bryce, thanks for doing the gymnastics to get all these cards to pop. On the one ring on the bottom right, again, a lot of these cards are dense. The one ring has a ton of text, but it has a 6. So when you're making a corruption check, a character has corruption points equal to that stat on the bottom right of anything that they own, basically any of their possessions. And so the ring itself gives +1 to every other character as well. So it's really a weight. It truly is a weight. They've designed it to be that way. So anytime a character is making a corruption check in a party with the one ring, they default have a +1. If it's Frodo, he has a 6 that's happening. And so he's got his +4 stat though. So that only leaves a gap of 2. Because if you fail a corruption check, you don't want to do that. You lose the character and the item. They basically, become ethereal and become a part of a wraith, so to speak. So the way I'm trying to win the game is a little different than normal. So a lot of times you're just trying to max out points. And so the way I design the solo mode is you can kind of do what you want, and you go around scoring points, fighting enemies, and doing your thing, and it lets you run through your deck a couple times and see how effective it is at doing its thing. But the card... another important element of this game is a sideboard. So I have a handful of cards in my sideboard here, not even my full stack, because again, I don't even have enemies. But during your turn, you can actually tap your wizard. So like I have Gandalf here. You can actually tap your wizard to put a card from your sideboard and shuffle it into your deck. And you can only do this if you have 5 or more cards in your deck. So there's a stack of things I'm trying to pull off, which I will show you. I have a card called Smoke Rings. This is important because I can play it and I can bring a resource or character from my sideboard or discard pile into my play deck and shuffle it. And there's not that requirement of having at least 5 cards in my deck. And there's some really important cards I basically want to get at the end of my deck to make sure they're in my hand. One of these is called Cracks of Doom. So Cracks of Doom will pop, and it says only playable if the One Ring is at Mount Doom. Its bearer must make a corruption check modified by a -4. So Frodo is a +4 to corruption checks. So his +4 would basically cancel out the -4. He'd have to make a corruption check. Now, important to remember, the ring's corruption check, the ring is adding 6. So literally on a roll, even if it's Frodo with the ring at Mount Doom playing Cracks of Doom, if I rolled, I'd have to get a 7 to succeed at this. If successful, the One Ring is destroyed and its bearer player wins. That's how I win the game in this deck. If I fail, Frodo and the ring go away and I've got problems. Which is why I have a few things in my deck to potentially make that not as big of an issue. I have Sam Gamgee, who can be as effective or close to as effective as Frodo. I also have Merry and Pippin in the deck because they are decent at it. Also, Bilbo is pretty good at it. He's a +4 as well. The downside of Bilbo is he can only be played at his home site, which is Bag End. So I would have to come all the way to Bag End to play him and then move all the way back to Mount Doom with him. But, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And Ryan was asking if I'm playing Leaf Brooch to give myself some more chances. Yeah, I do have Leaf Brooch in. So basically, it allows me to discard it instead of the gold ring when I test it. I also have some important cards like, let me find it. If you want to see, I literally built this deck on a stream last time that I streamed, and it's in that blog with the solo rules that I linked to. And I built everything except for the characters that I added, which I eventually just added the Fellowship because I thought that was thematic. But I go through the whole deck and why I'm doing it, and it's like a 2 or 3 hour process to slowly... the deck building this is really cool because you basically start with some little nugget of a concept or a card, and slowly you start... it's like weaving something. You just start building on it, and things are connected in such a way that eventually you just end with a deck that's big enough to be your deck, which is what happened here. So that you can watch the whole process if you want. But another card that's important here is Wizard's Test. So it's a spell... wizard only, and only if a character in his company has a gold ring. You play it to test a gold ring, and then you make 2 rolls. So you get to roll twice, and you get to choose which result to use for the test. And then the wizard has to make a corruption check modified by -1. This makes my odds of actually finding the ring go a lot higher, which is part of the deck. Ryan Roper is saying, I want to build a Galadriel deck. That's literally next on my list. I don't know how it functions or works, but I want to make Galadriel work because we'll pop Galadriel, and she looks... it's a beautiful card. I love that card. Edward asking, Zach, you and Steven have mentioned D&D a few times in streams. What do you both tend to play, and who's more likely to DM? Truth be told, I think characters in our life like Jonathan or his friend Jared are most likely to GM. I would oscillate between like a ranger or a wizard was my typical go-tos, which if you've watched a lot of our streams probably won't surprise you a whole lot. But I would say like we've actually probably spent Steven spent way more time RPGing than me. D&D was definitely looked down, like frowned upon in my household growing up. But for that reason, I think I've spent a lot more time playing role-playing games that aren't D&D. Ryan Roper saying, to make Galadriel work, you need to buy a few singles from the Balrog sets. Oh, man. If you're unaware, the Balrog release for this game, it makes it where you can actually play as the Balrog, is apparently really fun and powerful and good. But it's like weirdly expensive. It's like 2 decks for like $800 or $900. So I may end up just printing those because I've been tempted a few times. There were some decent deals on them, but I haven't ever jumped across the threshold on that. So we'll see how I end up feeling. All right, I'm going to pull up I have a cheat sheet. I'm going to go ahead and link to this. So I'm going to link to a cheat sheet of that I use to play the game. And this is just a really basic breakdown of the structures of the game. And I actually need to look at starting... no, I don't need to look. So in a traditional game, I think you have 8 cards. In the solo mode, I only draw 5 cards to represent the fact that I don't have my hazard cards in my deck, and that'll be my hand size basically throughout the game. So that's what I'll draw to and whatnot. So on a typical turn, I need to figure out where I'm starting, actually. I think I am at Rivendell. So I'm going to use this, let's see which one I want to use. So my whole party is going to hang out together at first. This is a chemo. Actually, let's see. How visible is he from up top? Can you see this guy? I'm going to put him at Rivendell. And that's where I'll start. So the first phase is Untapped Phase. I haven't gone yet, so there's nothing to untap. Then you get to the Organization Phase. So during the Organization Phase, you can play a character. You can play one, or your wizard, which is also a character. You can reorganize your company, so break them apart into different groups. Then you decide where to move each company by putting new locations face down next to the current location. So there's this location deck that I have, where I have literally all the locations that you can possibly go to. I think I might be missing one or two. It doesn't really matter. You can look them up if you need to, and this map's super helpful. It has them all. But basically, I'm going to move somewhere and do something. Let me see what's in my hand. That's going to be important for what I'm trying to do. And part of it is each time a group is moving somewhere, it's an opportunity for you to draw cards. So movement's helpful in that way too. So also worth noting, Sam has Cram, the card, which I can discard to untap. Whoever has it, eats and feels better, has more energy. Alternatively, you can discard it during the organization phase to allow its bearer's company to play an additional region card. We won't be doing that. Annalina has an Elven Cloak. You guys start with 2 minor items. You'll see just on the bottom right below the art, that's where like the traits and stuff are. This is a minor item. Tap Elven Cloak to cancel a strike against the bearer. The strike must be keyed to Wilderness, and it may not be duplicated on a given character. So you can only have 1 cloak, and you can cancel a strike when you're in the Wilderness. So, I drew a weird hand. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is get here, Mount Doom. And I decided you can technically go around these the horse plains and stuff to get there. I'm not going to do that. Not going to do it. Let me catch up with chat real quick before we keep going. B. Chris saying my mom used to bring my D&D group, high school age, cookies at like 2 a.m. Very, that's nice. That's the opposite of my experience. It was definitely not what you wanted to be caught doing. Okay, so I'm trying to get to Mount Doom, but I need to make the ring happen first. So I want to move around a little bit, but I also don't want to go through anything too scary. If you catch my meaning. So I think I might just take a slow move, because I also don't want to get too far from Bag End in case I draw into Bilbo. What's the nearest, least terrifying thing that I can do? So I drew a magic ring of stealth, but I need a gold ring for that to matter. So if I draw a gold ring, I would want to be somewhere where I could play the gold ring. Jason asking, does the map come with the game? It doesn't. A fan of the show sent this in. I think it was Oldrick that sent it. But I think you can find it online. It's an awesome map to have. Dark Realm's asking, is that just a religious upbringing? Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's semi-religious. Just the 80s scare of D&D being evil and magic and all that kind of stuff was definitely around. Ryan Ober saying, Rivendell to the Lorien should be the first step, right? Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, because I can basically go from Rivendell, so the region is going to be Rudar, and then the next region is Hollin, and you can basically have 4 regions in between where you're moving. So I'm in Rudar, and then there's Hollin, and then Dimrildel, and then Lorien, which is in the Wold and Foothills. Ryan saying you can move south to Ost and Edel. Yeah. I like not necessarily going to Rivendell yet, or Lorien yet, just in case, because I don't want to have to cross all the way back over to get to Bag End if I end up joining Bilbo this particular turn. So my whole party is going to stay together, and I'm going to choose to move them to, we'll go down to Ost, as indicated. So I'm going to go and get that location. Now, typically, you would literally get this location, and you put it face down, and you just choose where you're going for everything, and you would get to the point where you would tell your opponent, hey, everywhere I'm going to go is either a card that's on the table or a location that someone's already at, and then you would slowly resolve all your things. You can also pass items, so you can move items around. You can store items. If you're at a haven, you have to make a corruption check to do it. Are you willing to let it go? Then you go to the long event phase. So there's cards called long events that would come into play and stay into play until my next long event phase. I don't have any of those. Then we get to the movement hazard phase. So one at a time for each company. I only have one. You reveal the new site. If you're moving to a non-haven, you draw cards based on the site you're moving to. So if we look here, it's got a 1/1 in the bottom left corner. That means I will draw one card and my opponent would draw one card. And that's interesting. And then opponent can play hazard. So in the solo mode, here's what happens. I'm moving from Rudar is a forest to Ost in Edel, which is another forestry or wilderness. So it's wilderness, wilderness. And then the location I'm going to is ruins and layers. So the way solo works is I'm going to make a test for each of those locations along the site path. And then I'm going to draw a hazard card for each one that I fail. So a passing number for me is a 7. You can actually scale the difficulty of this based on what number you make that as a pass. But it's a 7, and then I basically get a negative modifier equal to how many cards my opponent would have drawn to simulate them seeing more cards and having a higher chance of playing hazards against me. So we're going to start with the wilderness. And I've made, and we'll probably use a lot of wilderness, but I made this wilderness deck and I have these fancy little icons that I drew. So I'll just put this here so I can see it. I'll shuffle this. And obviously it's color coded a little bit too, which can be helpful. Okay, so then I'll just put this here. And the first test I'm going to make is wilderness. So I'm going to roll, and it's a -1. So I basically need an 8 or better not to see a hazard card. I got an 8, so the first test I passed. Then the next region type I was in was another wilderness, so I'll do it again. I also passed that. And then the final is the location that I'm at, which is ruins and layers, which I will get. This is probably the one I will fail because it's going to be the one that's most painful. Don't you see? Let's do this. Let's go ahead and roll the test to see if I need it. There it is, a 6. So I failed that test, so I'll get a hazard card from this stack. And then I will be at that location, which we'll get to in a second. Ost is in Holland, Ryan. He thought it was in Dunland. So it's not one more test. Ryan's saying on his map it looks like Dunland. Trevor, yeah, I was actually looking at getting this map printed on a play map material as well. Then this got sent in, so I've just been using this, but I won't be surprised if I get it printed at some point. So I'll get one hazard card, and it'll go here. Let me go back to my rules for a second. Okay, so play it and resolve it. So I failed the test, so I'll go ahead and play and resolve. It's called Choking Shadows. It's a short event. Environment, modify the prowess of one automatic attack at a ruins and layers by +2. Alternatively, if Doors of Nights in play, it's not. So we'll look over at Ost in Edel, OST-IN-EDHIL, Bryce, for those at home trying to make that card pop on the screen. And you'll notice a few things that are interesting. So there's technically a region movement way to play this game. It's a little simpler. And if you look at this location, it's got the icon there for Ruins and Lairs in the top left corner. And let's see if we can get it to pop. I'm waiting for Ost. I'll keep going anyway. But if Vost pops, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's got the ruins and layers icon here. It also has the double wilderness. So you'll notice a lot of times when I'm moving, the things I'm calling out are going to match whatever's on this card, actually. And that's because that is built to basically say the most likely thing that's going to happen when you go here is this thing that's here. And there's a way to play where you just use that and you don't have to do all the tabulation and that kind of stuff. The original version of the game actually had cards for each region. And so you could actually play without the map, but I much prefer playing with the map. So automatic attacks are +2. It's a short event, so it'll just last for this round. And you'll notice on this location, or if you can't see it, let me see. Can you hear me, Bryce? Yeah, you just can't find the card. 2? It's probably number 1. Sorry, I just realized what you're doing. It's probably number 1. So the 2 copy of the card a lot of times in our database, I'm talking to Bryce, is the card when you're playing as the bad guy. So like when you're playing as the Witch King, they have a different set of the way these locations and stuff work. Almost every time the 2 is going to be that. So for now, it'll default to the 1. Anyways, so Nearest Haven, Rivendell is fine. Playable. You can play items, both minor and gold rings. And automatic attacks. Wolves, 3 strikes with 5 prowess. So this Choking Shadow would give each of those attacks +2, making them a 7 prowess, which is pretty strong. So for me to actually be able to play items and do stuff, I have to face those automatic attacks. There are no enemies, so I make it to location, and I have to decide whether I face this. And if I do, I'm going to have to take 3 wolves attacks at 7. So I need to see if that's something I'm interested in. So I actually have a way to like basically cancel all 3 of those attacks and not really worry about it. But there's nothing currently that I want to play at that location, so it's not worth my time. So I basically show up here, but I'm not going in, is the proper vernacular. And if you play the game, and this seems, this is where I get most uncomfortable in how much I do or don't know the rules, but I'm pretty sure that I can just hang out and not do anything, which is fine. The other thing is, if I do go in and I play something, you basically exhaust it to do that. And exhausted locations get discarded and they can't be played until you run out of deck and shuffle again, and those get shuffled as well. But they enter essentially your discard pile. So you can only farm something from a location 1 time. And when you do farm, you can actually basically exhaust a secondary character to play a minor item. Ryan Rober saying, if you don't have any items to play, there's no reason to. Ryan Rober saying, you're 100% correct. You don't have to go in. Well, that's great. Ryan saying he sees where he messed up about the location and looking at the dots and not the symbol. It's on the border. Yep. Okay, so I went there. Success, we're fine. I'm going to go back to my rules cheat sheet and keep walking down the phase. So once all hazards are played and resolved, remove the previous site if there are no characters. So if I came from a different site, I remove it. Both players draw up to 8 and or discard down to 8. You only draw if your wizard is present or if your total mind is 3 or greater. So my mind is way more than 3 or greater. I have too many cards in my hand. So I will get rid of 1, discarding down to 5 basically. And then we go to the sites phase. Now that each company is at their new site, 1 by 1, so I would have encountered all the hazards. They may decide to enter that site. When they enter that site, all auto attacks trigger and resolve. If a site is successfully entered, you may tap a character and the location to play a specified item. You can also tap a second character to play a minor item. Then end of turn. The active player may discard a card and then draw back up to 8. So we're going to end of the turn, and I need to get something that's playable. Otherwise, I'm going to keep spinning my wheels. So I'm going to discard a card and draw. And one thing mentioned earlier about your wizard being in play that is true is that if your wizard's in play, you actually can only play characters to their site at a haven, which is like Lorien, or at their home site. So characters do get harder to play in that instance. All right, so I've got 17 total mind used. I basically need... Oh, you know what? Yeah, okay. Ryan Rover say you're just camping outside the ruins, not exploring them. Yeah, so I feel like I'm just gonna hop over to Lorien because I did draw my friend Gollum. I'm gonna need to draw Gandalf in order to play him because I don't have enough influence. But he's playable at Goblin Gate or Moria. Moria's here, which I'm close to. But there's also Goblin Gate, which I need to find really quickly. This is easily one of my favorite parts of the game. Like, oh, it's way up here. Huh. Maybe I'll go back to Rivendell and just bide my time. But basically, like, understanding the map and where you're at and where you need to be going and stacking the things, you know, the order of where you're going is partially based on your hand and what items you need to play, but also what you're trying to accomplish. So right now, I'm kind of just like, picture pre-Gandalf realizing that the One Ring is the One Ring. Hobbits are just hanging out, you know, smoking a pipe and having a good time. What up, David Whitfield? See, saying morning, Zach, and all. Be sure to call for the Eagle taxi. All right, I'm gonna go. Let's see. Don't need that. Minor item. I'm gonna go to the Inton Moors. So I'm going from Holland, which is wilderness, back into Rudar, which is wilderness, into Inton Moor, the Inton Moors. So let's put Ost back, and I'm gonna go to the effort here of keeping these. I have them in alphabetical order, and I'm gonna keep them that way because it's gonna make these really easy to find. And I'm going to the Inton Moors. There they are. So wilderness, wilderness, ruins and layers again. And this time we're going to draw one card. So let's see what we get. Ryan, when do I play short events? When does that happen? We'll come back to that in a second. Short events without an obvious trigger. So we'll do tests. The first is going to be wilderness. I'm a -1 because the Morris has a 1 draw from my opponent. It's a 9, so I pass. So again, I'm looking for 8. So second one is another wilderness. Got it. And then the third one is the ruins and layers. So does anyone feel like I'm going to hit this one? Wouldn't you know it? I mean, what are the odds that it's the third roll every time that I hit? I got a light Drake. How about that? I like the headlight looking vibe of his eyeballs. Also, I'm going to read the flavor text on these cards. I'm realizing that those are there. And, you know, pardon my pronunciation. It says the Kaloki boast whip-like tails with serrated spines, each housing a retractable membrane filled with electrically charged fluid. The sting of one knife-like spine delivers the impact of a lightning bolt. That's super cool. Okay, so we have a light Drake. We're going to resolve it. It's got 8. We'll go. John and Santa, I just hopped on. Are you drawing a card for each region you go through and what symbol it is? So I basically make a test for my entire site path. So the regions I go through and then the site type that I'm actually landing at. And I'm looking for a 7, but I apply a negative modifier equal to the number of cards my opponent would have drawn to represent them having more cards in their hand and more likely to play a hazard. So I'll test, in this case I want wilderness, wilderness, ruins, and layers. So I passed the test, failed. So I drew the top card of my ruins and layers deck. Brian's saying you don't put Ost back until you successfully travel, which is getting through these hazards. Because technically I could get bounced back to Ost, which is true. But we'll leave it for now. Here's a good question. On my Elven Cloak, Ryan, you might be able to help with this. It says I can tap Elven Cloak to cancel a strike against the bearer. The strike must be keyed to wilderness, maybe not be duplicated on a given character. So the Light Drake came out with keying to the ruins and layers on it, but it does have the wilderness key there, like on the card. So can Elven Cloak be used against it even still, or does it have to have been played being keyed to that specific type? We'll get back around. So the Drake, let me get to my, here's how attacks resolve. All right, Ryan's saying it's key to the ruins and layers, so them's the beats. So combat and strikes. When strikes are generated, the defender chooses where to assign hits and must assign them evenly and can only assign one per character. Can't assign to tapped characters. So there's 2 strikes that I have to assign to characters. I'm gonna go ahead and assign to Glorfindel and Annalina. Okay? Any strikes that remain after untapped characters or assigned strikes are chosen by the enemy. So like if I only have one character that was ready, I would assign one, then the opponent gets to choose. Untapped characters cannot be targeted by hits. Untapped characters not targeted by hits tap to add 1 prowess to a specific attack. So like in this case, the hobbits could tap to add prowess to these characters. When a character is taking a hit, they must tap to use their full prowess. Otherwise, their prowess is -3. So Glorfindel is an example. His prowess is an 8. That stat on the bottom left, 8. So if he stays standing, he's only going to actually have a prowess of 5. So I'm going to add 5 to my test, and I need to get higher than the attack on the Light Drake, which is an 8. So literally on a 3 or lower, he would actually take a hit, which we'll get to in a minute. If I tap, he's a full 8, which means it's impossible for me to fail. If you roll plus your prowess is less than the attack, you're wounded and make a body check. That's a whole separate thing. If you tie, the enemy is discarded, so it goes away. If you roll plus prowess is greater than the attack, you actually set this card aside and you score it. You'll notice the Light Drake has a 1 on the top left corner. So if I defeat both of the strikes, I actually score this point. If a character is already tapped, you apply a -1 prowess. So like if Glorfindel was already tapped and he got a strike assigned to him, because my opponent got to pick that, he would only be a -1 instead of a -3 for not tapping. If a character is wounded, so this is tapped upside down is wounded. It means they've been hit, but they didn't get discarded. They actually apply a -2. So if I get hit, we'll cover that in a minute. I'm going to use Annalina first, and she's actually going to... Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to use my cards. I'm going to take 1 strike on Sam Gamgee. That'll be the first strike, and then I'll take 1... Will I take 1? Yeah, 1 on Glorfindel. So the strike on Sam, I'm actually going to play a card called Halfling Strength. Hobbit only, cancel 1 strike against the Hobbit. Then Glorfindel, I'm not going to tap, so I'm going to take the -3, meaning he's at a 5. And I need to get to an 8, so I need at least a 3 with Glorfindel. And I got a 5. So he actually defeats that strike. Now, because I canceled the first one, do I still score the Light Drake? Trevor's saying no. I didn't think so either. So I'm just going to discard this Light Drake because I only defeated 1 of the strikes. Cool. Okay, so I made it to the Ettenmoors. Then I have to decide if I want to enter the Ettenmoors. And you'll notice on the Ettenmoors, it's got an automatic strike of Troll, 1 strike with 9 prowess, which I could easily deal with. But again, here's the reality of my situation. There's nothing at the Ettenmoors that I drew that I want to play. What I am going to do, though, is go ahead and play Smoke Rings. So, you know, Gandalf just going to take a break. Oh, you know what? There's another way for me to win this game that I am recognizing here, called Gollum's Fate. It's unique. You can only play it if the One Ring and Gollum are both at Mount Doom during the sight phase. The One Ring is destroyed and its bearer player wins. So you don't even have to make a test at that point. That's really powerful. I'm going to basically just grab a card with the Smoke Rings that is good for me to have and shuffle it into my deck. And I'm basically just doing this not because I need this at this very second, as much as I just need to get cards out of my hand so I can draw more to get more stuff to play. Levi saying this looks really fun. Ryan saying it's a great game if you are looking to experience a game. It is definitely an experience. Levi, the game came out in the 90s. Middle or CCG, check out the challenge decks. That's like the best place to get started. There's 10 different pre-built, ready-to-go decks. Okay, so I played Smoke Rings. And then I'll go back to my structure to make sure I'm doing this right. Once all hazards are resolved, remove the previous site. Both players drop to 8. I'm doing 5 because of the way I'm playing this game. And then I'll draw back up to 5. And then technically, at the end of the round, I can do it again. During the site phase, I choose whether or not I'm going to enter into this. I'm not. But again, I'm going to play a Smoke Rings. And this time, I'm going to actually throw in one of my win conditions. I have Golem. So Golem's Fate seems like the easiest thing for me to achieve right now. I just have to make sure he can actually make it without getting aced. So I'm going to shuffle that in. Again, I'm just playing cards to basically see more cards. Okay. And then I can discard a card if I want. I actually drew the 1 ring, which is fine as long as I can get... I got to get a lot of stuff going between now and then. So... let's discard Gimli, unfortunately. And then I'll draw, because I have to get more cards going if I want to do anything productive. Okay, end of the round, or back around. And it's time to go somewhere else. Ugh. I mean, I might keep going back and forth between the Admores and Ost just to get cards. I'm just going to go to Rivendell from the Admores. So it's literally, now, on my site path, would I start with Ruins and Layers technically, or would it just be Wilderness where I'm moving the region, and then where I'm landing, which is Rivendell? Dysphoria, what up? Late to the party. Glad you're still going. Yep, we're really just cutting our teeth. Had a lot of discussion up front. Bryce, you look like you're having a good time over there. He's just listening for crazy Lord of the Rings names. What a job. Yeah. On this, Keone saying it starts with the region. Okay, good. So I'm going to go Wilderness to a safe haven. And that means I'm going to test Wilderness. Got it. It's a 9. Technically, I think I draw 2 when I'm at Lorien. Or Rivendell. Let me pull up Rivendell. I think I pass either way. Yep. For people that played back in the day, how often did this happen? Where you're kind of just cruising around a little triangle, trying to, draw the right cards. So I passed. No hazard from the Wilderness, and I draw 2. Where's the Gandalf when you need him? Gonna go ahead and play a Smoke Rings. Machination say, I can see you making your own Middle-earth map with all the game details and using some of those mithril miniatures to really make it feel like the books. Would add so much charm to this for sure. Yeah, like I said, I have some of the GW miniatures that I'm planning on painting, and so once I have those, I'm going to be very excited about that. Ryan saying in a sealed tournament, it was pretty common, which is why I figured out which sites had draws of 3 to help me move through my deck. What sites do have a draw of 3? That would be nice to know. All right. Okay. I will pass everything. I'm going to discard some cards. Levi's saying, can you still find this game or is it really rare? You can still find it. The challenge decks are amazing. Again, it's a one-stop shop for it. All right. What's the nearest 3, Ryan? Jonathan H. That's definitely my plan. Using GW miniatures for your groups. And then he laminated the maps. But I do think on a playmat would be a nice material. Ryan saying I played on the east side of the map, but Burr, Widdew, and Dead Marshes. Well, I don't know. How far away is Burr? Let's find it. Way over there. Yeah. I'm just going to go from Rivendell to Lorien. So we're going to go Wilderness, 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 Wilderness. 4 Wilderness. And I don't know if I have a Lorien card. That's weird. I assume it's a 2. Ryan Rober saying Isengard has a good draw. Is this true? I can make my way down south. All right, I'm going to start testing at -2. First one successful. Second one successful. Third one failed. It's always the third one. We got some wargs. What's the deal with them? Wolves, 2 strikes. I will assign 1 to Annalina and 1 to Glorfindel. So Glorfindel's not going to tap. I need a 4. Got it. Took a little risk there. Annalina is going to tap the Elven Cloak to cancel the attack. It's gone. And then my final test. Failed. So another Wilderness. Call of Home. Playable on a non-wizard character that is not the bearer of the One Ring. The character's player must make a roll, return the character to his player's hand if the result, plus his unused general influence is less than 10. So let's just get the result. It's a 9, and I have 3 unused influence, which is 12. I succeeded. Any one item held by a character removed in this fashion may automatically be transferred to another character. So Call of Home failed. It did not get me. Still close. David saying, yeah, go visit Saruman. He's a fella you can trust. Middle-earth's Mussolini. See you, Brian. If you come back, hopefully I'll be Duncan by then. All right. And then technically, I'm supposed to draw 2 there. It's a trap. You know, what I should do is split my parties up. And I should draw a lot. All right. Well, let's make that a thing. So start of the phase, untap everything. And then I'm going to move everyone back to Rivendell. So we're going to do the inverse of what I just did. Draw 2. That's what I'm talking about. And then I'll make my tests. Failed. First one is Lure of Nature. Corruption does not affect hobbits and dwarves. A character receives 2 corruption points. Target character makes a corruption check after all other hazards have been played. For each wilderness in his company's sight path, that's 4. What? Oh, no. All right, next card. That's actually hilariously bad. I passed. One more. I failed. see what we get. Searching Eye. Cancel any card requiring a scout skill before it is resolved, or cancel any ongoing effect of a card that requires a scout skill to play. If this card is an on-guard card, it can be revealed, so that doesn't matter. Okay, so after all of these are resolved, I have to trigger Lure of Nature. 3 corruption points total, and I have to make 4 corruption checks. Yikes. So when I'm making a corruption check, I check my corruption points, which is 4. Or 3. It's 3. Untapped characters at the same location can tap to add 1 before I roll. Roll 2d6 if it's greater than, nothing. If it's equal. So if I roll a 4, jeez. All right, I'm going to basically tap 1 character on each of these. So I need a 3. Got a 3. Wow. Got a 4. But there's going to be 1 that's a problem. Passed. And then the final corruption check. Passed. That's a problem. During the organization phase, a character with this card may tap to attempt to remove it, make a roll. If the result is greater than 4, discard this card. Jiminy Christmas. Jonathan's saying I may have missed it, but is 7 for fail or pass just a number you roll you decided on, or is there a reason for it? So basically on 2d6s, 7 is the most common result, but it's basically the middle of the bell curve of results. So it's middle of the road difficulty. The average sight draw is 2. So a 7 means that most of the time you're going to need a 9 to not see a card, which puts us at about the odds of seeing cards that I want. So a lot of times you'll see like 3, you'll have to make 3 tests. And on average, I want to draw a couple, like a card or 2. Having the threat of 3 cards, and sometimes you get 0 cards, because sometimes you're playing the game and your opponent doesn't have any hazards that key to that site. So because there's always hazards that can key to wherever you're at, you want to have some odds of success at that, but that's more or less the reasoning. Okay, so let me go to my phases again real quick. So I go back to the beginning of the phase, I'm going to ready everything. Then in the organization phase, I can tap this character to attempt to remove it. I need a 4 or better to discard it. I got it. That's an awful card to hit, especially when I'm just tromping around in the wilderness over here. But now Annalina's tapped, so splitting them up is less likely. I will do this, though. This will be fun. I'm going to play Gandalf, and I can only play 1 character or wizard per turn. So I play Gandalf, and I can't do anything else. But you'll notice he has a 10 direct influence. He doesn't cost any mind. So now I literally have 13 available, 10 of which has to be directly on Gandalf. But as an example, like he can directly control Sam and Frodo, and then they basically don't count against my total, which is super nice. And he's a great person to go send off in a group, and then I can have these 2 go off and do something else, which I will definitely be doing. What up, Aldrich? Appreciate you sending the map. It definitely is a game changer for this game. Okay, so now I'm basically going to have Glorfindel and Annalina, I'm in the organization phase, as 1 group. And then Gandalf's going to go with Frodo and Sam. And they're basically going to go find Gollum. And in a minute, when Glorfindel's ready, they're going to go to Bag End and find a hobbit. Just a backup option, if you will. So these cats are going to stay in Rivendell. They are going to move. I'm pretty close. So Rivendell can go directly from this region to the Goblin Gate. So it's going to be Wilderness into Goblin Gate. Let me find the Goblin Gate. I found Lorien. Now we're going to start moving. All right, so Goblin Gate is a 1 draw for me and a 2 draw for my opponent. So I Wilderness and then this symbol. Which is Shadow Holds. So it is a non-circle half film. Do. Nice, Levi. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I'm -2, so I'm looking for a 9. I'll do Wilderness first. I failed, so I'll get a Wilderness card, which is an Old Man Willow. Oh no, he's the worst. He's an awakened plant, 1 strike, 15 prowess against hobbits. May also be played keyed to Fangorn, Heart of Mirkwood, Southern Mirkwood, etc., etc. 2 wilderness in the site path are required, and the way I'm playing it, he's in the wilderness deck, so he can pop out anytime a wilderness character would. And it's 1 strike. And if you look, there's the automatic attacks on the Goblin Gate of 3 strikes. So I'm going to have to deal with that. So I will assign the strike to Sam. Then I'll play Concealment. Tap Sam to cancel the strike, which is just going to discard Old Man Willow. And then we will keep going. So now I'm going to test the Shadow Holds. And I failed, so I actually get a Shadow Holds card. We'll see what it is. Call for Home, playable on a non-wizard character that's not a bearer of 1 ring. The character's player must make a roll. Return the character to the player's hand if the result plus his unused general influence is less than 10. So this is actually a good time to get this because I only have unused general influence. It starts at 20. These 2 don't count because they're with Gandalf. She doesn't count because she's with Glorfindel. So I'm literally only using 8, which means my unused is 12. Plus 10, 22. I succeed. It's a pretty decent card to get. Okay, then now we're actually at the location. If I want to go in and be able to play something, I'm going to have to face 3 Orc Strikes with 6 prowess. And do I have to defeat each of those in order to be able to play something? I'm not sure if the successfully entering a location require me to beat each of those automatic strikes. Bryce, can you imagine playing this without the help of hundreds of people chatting with you? Kaoni's saying, you don't have to defeat them, but you have to live through them with an untapped person. That makes sense. So, I think I can do that. Could also just go very poorly. Let's try it. So, I'll assign a strike to Frodo and assign a strike to Gandalf. And then there's 1 left over, so it has to go on Sam. Gamgee, I'm going to go ahead and discard the Cram to ready Sam so that he's not suffering a -3. And they're basically both going to tap during their strike, and Gandalf's not. So Gandalf's going to be -3. We'll start with his. I need a 3 to not get hit. I got it. And then Sam and Frodo are both at 1, so I'm going to need a 5 or better for them to be fine. Failed? I guess I should have declared that was Sam. So he fails. He'll take a body check in a second. And Frodo is also going to go. And he succeeds. So Sam is going to make a body check. Which, if you're hit by a strike, roll 2d6. If the value is greater than my body stat, the character is eliminated. Wounded characters that are hit apply +1 to this roll. If the value is less than your body stat, your character remains in play. Okay, so Sam's got a body stat of 9, which means a 9 or lower. I'm fine. Got an 11. So the value is greater than my body stat. The character is eliminated. Sam exits the game. He got Smeagoled. And I'm going to put him up here in my lost pile. Then I successfully entered the location. So it says I can play items, minor, gold ring, etc. I'm going to actually play Golem, who is an item. No, he's an ally. He's kind of like an item. Playable at Goblin Gate or Moria if his company size is less than 3. Important note, hobbits count for half of a person in your company size. So Gandalf is 1, Frodo is a half of 1, and Golem also counts as half. So their size is 2. If his company size is less than 3, tap Golem to cancel an attack against this company keyed to Wilderness or Shadowland. And that's permanent. So that's going to be a nice upgrade. So I'll play that. And I don't even know. Do I have to tap Gandalf to do that? Or is he just playable like during my turn? Because if so, I wouldn't have even entered the site. I would just be at this location. But I think I have to enter that location to get Golem because I have to go through and deal with some goblins. If that ends up not checking out, we'll come back to that. But for now, that's fine. Okay, so I have Golem. What I need now, ultimately, is to get the ring out. And then we can go try to dunk. You have to tap a character and he's attached. So Gandalf saving Golem makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so then we get to the end of the phase. I can discard a card technically and draw. What up, Ryan? Lost Sam, but gained a Golem. So you tell me if it's a victory or not. Everything's going to ready. Now, here's a question on playing characters now that my wizard's in play. I think I may have made a mediumly bad timed mistake. So, playing characters, now I can only play them to their home site, right? Or... no, that's not true. I can play them at a haven if my wizard is present. Is that correct? Let me look. It's very specific. Need to add that to the cheat sheet. Because I have characters I want to play. I just need to make sure I can play them before I do that. We'll see what chat has to say in a second. How's everyone doing out there? Is this making sense? It's pretty amazing. Ryan saying Sam just became goblin soup. Yeah, he gone. I have this one ring. It looks amazing. I really want to get it into play. Okay, David's saying yeah, so Rivendell, Lorien, etc. Okay, well, I'm going to make my way down to Rivendell. So Frodo and Gandalf are going to go from Goblin Gate through the Anduin Vales to Lorien, which is going to be Wilderness, Lorien. And then... Andre saying, so awesome. Well, thank you. Happy to have you. It's really cool to be able to do. Rafflecopter saying, how much would it cost to get a full board like this? So the map is not that expensive, and the challenge decks are like 20, 30 bucks each, maybe. So they're moving here. And I can't do... I was going to actually move these cats to Bag End to go pick up a Hobbit, but I can only play characters... Oh, before I do that, I guess I can't play characters until I'm at there. So they're also going to try to move to Lorien, which is going to be the 4 Wilderness special again. That's right. So this location was tapped, and when it gets discarded once I leave it. Cage McClure saying this rules. I have the Lord of the Rings soundtrack playing in the background. I wish I could have it playing. There's stream issues with that. Okay, so let's start. It's Wilderness, Haven. I'm going to draw 2. Oh, that would have been nice. So first one is, we're at a -2 because I drew 2 cards. This is Wilderness. So I failed. I get a Wilderness card. William, in quotes. Unique troll, 1 strike. If played after Bert or Tom and if keyed to the same site path against the same company, each character wounded by William must discard all non-special items. So this is an 11. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and halflings. Nope. I'm going to exhaust Golem to cancel it. Okay, then we'll make the second Wilderness test, which I failed again. And we get lesser spiders. Oh no, this is worse. So it's a 7, but there's 4 strikes. So each character will get 1, and I'll apply an extra each extra hit that can't go somewhere is a -1. So we'll apply -1 to both because Frodo's only got a 1 prowess, so it's going to make him a 0 effectively. I'm going to exhaust Frodo, and he's looking for a 7. He could also get bounced right off this table. Oh no, wrong. I'm not going to exhaust Frodo. I'm going to play Halfling Stealth. So just cancel the strike against him. Then Gandalf will exhaust to be a 6 because I can't lose Gandalf. All right, successful. So I don't defeat the strike because I canceled one of them, but I don't take any from that. Then they show up in Rivendell, and Goblin Gate gets Lorien, pardon me, and Goblin Gate goes away. Then Annalina and Glorfindel, I'll actually put out this guy, Shafithi. He technically is here. So they're also trying to move to Rivendell. There's 4 Wilderness checks. They're a -2. I'll get to draw 2 cards. Ryan Rover saying 1 strike is assigned to Golem also. Do allies have strikes against them? If so, he would cancel the strike against himself. What up, Van? Ryan saying he's a character. All right, well, he canceled the strike against himself, and then Frodo would have had to make a check, which he passed, thankfully. So they're going to do the Wilderness checks, and I technically draw 2. Okay, so Wilderness check, I fail. First one. We get Tom. Unique troll, 1 strike. If played after Bert or William and if keyed to the same site path against the same company, each character wounded by Tom must discard all non-special items. He's a 13. We're going to go ahead and cancel with my Elven Cloak. Thank you very much. Second test. Failed. Stormcrow. Permanent event. The direct influence of each wizard is reduced by 2 or by 4 if Doors of Night's in play. Discard all resource permanent events that have been played on each company with a wizard. No such cards may be played on each wizard's company. Discard this card when any play deck is exhausted, cannot be duplicated. So that's just going to stay here. All right, third. Failed. Don't mind me. Huorn. Hjorn. Awakened plant, 1 strike. May also be played at Druidan Forest, etc., etc., etc. So it's a 10. I'm just going to tap Glorfindel and take this guy out. Got him. So I'm actually going to score this one. I'm going to put him over here. Fourth test, because why not? And we passed that one. So they're going to merge into a single company. Rivendell is going to go back in the deck, and everyone is back together. Dave Whitfield saying, I love the art on Stormcrow. Yeah, there's some really good art in this game. Just like hits you right in the feels. All right, so successfully got to Lorien, doing my thing. I have too many cards. All right, and so we are back at the first of the rounds. I can play a character. I'm at Lorien, so we're gonna take a minute to just build, because I've got essentially a bunch of unused influence. 8, technically 0 here, so I've got 12 open. No, I've got 17 open. Jeez. Well, this seems to make a certain amount of sense to me. I'm going to go ahead and play Aragorn, and he's just going to be under the direct influence of Gandalf. So then my total use right now is 13. And then we're going to start partying. I need to find a ring and play it. I'm going to look at what kind of card it is real quick. So it is a gold ring item. It's a square. And is it a major or minor item? Looks like it's a normal item, whatever that means. Jonathan, yeah, you can have up to 20 influence, but Gandalf provides 10. So technically 30. Oh, man. Well, let's just go to Hermit's Hill, right? Let's see how many cards I draw at Hermit's Hill. I need to draw at least 2 everywhere I'm going. That's a 1. Not good enough. So another option, I could go over to Burr Widow, draw 3, but I really should send Annalina and Glorfindel somewhere by themselves so that I can just draw more cards. Let's see how many Bandits Lair gets me. 1, not what you want. So what is that? Wilderness? Not wilderness. Scott, that's a good point. So you need to go to site that plays a ring, like Gladden Fields, Austin, Edel, Isengard, etc. I feel like Gandalf going down to Isengard makes a certain amount of sense, don't you? All right, let's go. We're going from Lorien. I'm going to go, this crew here is going Lorien to Isengard. Let's see if Saruman has anything to teach us. And then my other crew, where do they want to go? To Gladden Fields? Is that a ring? It has a little circle around it on the map. Gold ring specifically. Well, we'll try it. They're going to go to the Gladden Fields, and we're going to do that first so I can see that card. So they're going from Wilderness to Borderlands, which is here. Wilderness Borderlands to the location. And it's a 1 card draw, so I'll draw 1. And a -1, so I need 8. So Wilderness first. Failed. Lesser Spiders. Why not? 4 strikes. 1 on each, and they each get a -1. So Glorfindel's a 7. He won't exhaust. It's going to take him down to a 4. He needs a 3. Start there. Got it. And then Annalina. We'll just tap. She's a 3. So I need a 4 to defeat the spiders. Got it. Barely. So I actually defeat the spiders, and we'll score it. Second test is going to be this new type, which is the Borderlands. I failed, so we're going to see a fun card. Abductor. I wonder if he's related to the Conductor. Each non-wizard defending character wounded by the Abductor is discarded. 1 strike. So Glorfindel will just tap. We'll deal with this guy. There's no way for me to fail. So he defeats the strike, and we'll score the card. And then last test is actually for the location itself. This was a costly exchange, which is Ruins and Lairs. And I passed, so I don't get the minus. Actually, Gandalf's direct influence is reduced by 2, so he can't control Aragorn. He can only control Frodo, which puts me, I'm still fine. Okay, and technically this is them. All right, so they're at the Gladden Fields. They won't enter because I didn't draw anything worth playing, but my friends over here are going to Isengard. I'll go ahead and draw 2. And they're going, let's see, from Wilderness to Borderlands to Ruins and Lairs. So I draw on 2. I need a 9. First is Wilderness. Failed. River. If a company that has moved to this site this turn does not tap a ranger, it must do nothing during its site phase. So what I do when I actually get there? Yeah, that's fine. We will take a river. Next is Wilderness. Failed again. Giant Spiders. 2 strikes. If the body check for non-wizard characters wounded by giant spiders equals his body, the character is discarded. May also be played, etc. 2 Wilderness, etc. So it's a 10 with 2 strikes. We'll sign 1 to Golem. And 1 to Frodo. So we'll tap Golem to cancel 1, and we'll play Concealment with Frodo to cancel the other. We're just biding our time here. So that's 2 hazards. My hazard limit is 3, because I have 3 characters in the party. So only 1 more can possibly happen. So we're going to go Borderlands. I failed, so we'll get the card. Lost in Borderlands. Playable on a company that is moving this turn. You may play 1 additional hazard on target company for each borderland in the site's path. So that's 1. So I can technically get 1 extra, which could end up being Ruins and Lairs. And I passed, so I don't actually get a Ruins and Lair. And I show up at Isengard. Jeez. Yeah, Ryan, I'm not planning on doing anything once I get there. I didn't draw the cards I needed. So, that'll be the end of the round. I discard down. But I did draw Scroll of Isildur, which is a greater item. So now I'm looking somewhere I can go nearby that lets me play a greater item. You know, Casual Moria. That's an option. The Stones, not so bad. I think they will try to go to the Stones. And then these lovely people. Woodman Town? It's funny. They're just going to try to move to Woodman Town. And again, I'm just drawing cards and trying to get to the point where I can actually play Ring. Scott, that's awesome to hear. He's saying, Zach created a really interesting way of doing hazards. I've used this too and found it much more enjoyable than the traditional method of playing solo. Jonathan Knight's saying, you have me getting all my cards out now. LOL, this way of solo play is great. I'm happy it's working out as well as it is. Being able to kind of just play and go across the the map as you want, super fun. So we're gonna go here first. They're gonna try to go to Woodman Town. They're in Wilderness, or they're actually in Borderlands. Is that what that's called? I'm getting the names down. Borderlands already. So they're moving from Borderlands to Border Holds. Just 2 tests. I'll draw 2 cards for that. There, I finally got my precious gold ring. Yes. So we'll test the first one, which is Borderlands. They're at a -2, so they pass, nothing. Then they get to the Border Holds. And they passed again, so nothing happens. They're at Woodman Town. Now, interestingly about Woodman Town is that really I can only play minor items, and I don't have any. If it had been the flip, if I had drawn this card when I was going to Gladden Fields, I could play it, which would be nice. But I can't. So, this crew is going from Isengard to the Stones, which is going to be Borderlands, Wilderness, the Stones. And this is a draw 1, so I only have a -1 test. So we'll go -1, passed. Then we have Wilderness, failed. Brigands. Men, 2 strikes. If any strike of Brigands wounds a character, that company must immediately discard an item of the defender's choice. Well, let's see how many cancels we have left. Should have played that. We'll assign 1 to Golem and 1 to Aragorn. Golem will cancel his strike. Aragorn will go ahead and exhaust. So he's a 6. There's no way for him to fail. He passes. So the Brigands have been defeated. Not actually defeated, but I didn't lose to them. Then we get another Wilderness at a -1. All right, we're going to have to draw this one. Wolves. It's an 8 with 3 strikes. Oh, no. We'll assign 1 to Gandalf and 1 to Frodo, because I have to. And there's 1 left over. So we'll have the extra one be assigned to Aragorn. He's already tapped, so he's going to be a -1. So he's a 5 to their 8. We'll go with him first. He passes. Frodo is going to tap, so he's a 1 to the 8. Passed. That was actually a big test. Then Gandalf's not going to tap. He's a 3 to an 8. Just have to get a little fortunate here. And I passed. So I actually beat all 3 of those tests. I will score a Wolves. And then my final test is a -1, and this is for the Ruins and Lairs, which I passed with flying colors. So they arrive, and now I have to decide whether I want to enter. If I do, I have to take the automatic attacks of the Pukelman, which is 2 strikes with 9 prowess. This is how I'm going to get my ring into play. Or no, it's not. This is how I'm going to get Isildur's Scroll of Isildur in play. So I need you. I won't enter. I'm just going to discard and be done. End of the round. What up, Ethan? This is the Middle-earth CCG. Scott saying, thanks for putting this on the table. It's great to see it again. Happy to do it. Kaoni saying you could have Doors of Night change the base roll of 7 to 8 and Gates of Morning change 7 to 6 to make it more thematic. Ethan, it is super fun. We have a bunch of other streams where we kind of teach it step by step. That'd probably be a good place to start. Oh, man. All right, now correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. I'm at the stones already, so technically I cannot move and just enter that site this turn. Is that correct? But I have to face the strikes. So these guys are moving back to the Gladen Fields. They're going to try to play the One Ring. Ethan, it is complicated and it isn't. Maurice, got a notification about Wasp shipping soon. Do you know when it's being released? It was originally supposed to come out this Friday. It's being delayed. You should expect to hear from us like within the next 24 hours about that. We're supposed to be getting concrete information about when it's coming. Enemy can still play hazards are the key to the site. Okay, great. That's fine. So I'm going to hang out. They're going to stay. And I don't get a draw, right? If I don't move. Ethan, I love this game. I've streamed it 4 or 5 times. I'm a big fan. Jared saying, got the notification for Fab release this morning. It was instantly gone. What released this morning? I missed that if it was a thing. Okay, so I don't draw if I don't move. So we'll start here where I'm moving to the Gladen Fields. I will draw 1. And I'm going to have to move from Borderlands to Layers and Strongholds. So we'll test at a -1. I failed. So Borderlands. Wargs. 2 strikes. Glorfindel. I should have done that. Before I moved, I'm going to play Stealth with Annalina. I did that last time too. So that I just can't get enemies played against me. So I failed, but the wargs just go away because they can't get played. And then we'll try the next one, which I passed. So none there. I'm at the Gladen Fields. I will choose to enter. Undead, 1 strike with 8 prowess. Each character wounded must make a corruption check. So Glorfindel will take the strike. It's an 8. He's an 8, but he's not going to tap. So he's -3. So it's 5 to 8. And I passed. 5, 10, yeah, passed. So I can enter the site. Now we're getting to the exciting stuff. I'm going to tap Glorfindel and the Gladen Fields to play a Precious Gold Ring on Glorfindel. And then that'll be the end of their interaction. I could technically tap another character to play a minor item, which I don't have. The stones, I don't get a draw because I'm already here. But I am going to enter the site. It's a Pupil Min, 2 strikes with 9 prowess. I'll assign 1 to Aragorn and 1 to Gandalf. They will both be tapping. So Aragorn first, he's at a 6 to 9. I need a 3. Got it. Gandalf is a 6 to a 9. I need a 3. I got it. So I will defeat the automatic strikes. Now, actually, I might change that. If I exhaust to play an item, do I have to play it on the character that's exhausting? I probably do, right? Let me see how I move. Jared saying the promo pack you guys had for Booster Box 1 and 2, I would be surprised if that went back in stock. I mean, it's hypothetically possible, but I was unaware. Kate saying, hey, I'm trying to learn how to play solo hazards like you're doing. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer them. We'll still do it. I'm going to exhaust Frodo. And we're going to play Scroll of Isildur, exhausting the stones. When a gold ring is tested in a company with the Scroll of Isildur, the result of the roll or draw is modified by +2. We're going to get a test moving stuff around. Okay, and I don't have any other ready characters or minor items to play, so we'll end the turn. And we're ready. Having some action happening now, which is fun. These sites stay tapped because they will go away when I leave. So these two are going to go from the Gladen Fields to Lorien. These, what's the safest route? Oh, actually during the organization phase. Let's move an item. The character passing it must make a corruption check. Frodo's really good at this. He has +4 to his corruption check. His total corruption points are 3 right now because of Scroll of Isildur, so there's no way for him to fail. So he's going to pass those. He's going to move. It's 7, so he succeeds. He's going to move these over to Aragorn. Makes sense, thematically speaking. Let's see what Scroll of Isildur's flavor text says. Yet even as I write, it is cooled, and it seemeth to shrink, though it loseth neither its beauty nor its shape. Already the writing upon it, which was at first clear as red flame, fadeth and is now only barely to be read. You love to see it. Let's see. And that's fine. I'm basically just looking for the safest route. I like going through Wilderness because I have Gollum. I'm looking at this Dunish clan hold. Nope. So I basically want a 1. Ruined Signal Tower. It's a 2. Now I can't find anything but 2s. Ostin. Going back to old Osty. There it is. They're going to try to go to Ostin Edel. So that's basically going to be a wilderness, ruins and layers. But I haven't an answer to this. So they're moving a lot. I'm going to go ahead and go here first. So I'm going to draw 2. And they are moving from Borderlands, Wilderness to Haven. So we'll test, and this is a -2. Borderlands first, I failed. Slayer, 2 attacks, one of 1 strike each. So it's 2 separate attacks against the same character. Attacker chooses defending characters. The defender may tap 1 character in the same company to cancel 1 of these attacks. So Glorfindel will be taking these attacks. I'm going to tap Annalina to cancel 1 attack. And then he's just going to deal with the other one. So he's going to exhaust, and then he's at an 8 to an 11. So he succeeds. And that's fine. Slayer is brutal. Then I'm going to get Wilderness. Failed. Dire Wolves. 4 strikes. 4 strikes at 8. Glorfindel is a -1 because he's already tapped. So he gets assigned 1. Annalina gets assigned 1, which she's going to ultimately cancel with the cloak. And so there's going to be a -1 to both attacks as well. So Annalina cancels hers. Glorfindel's at -1 because he's exhausted. -1 because there's a lot of strikes. That means he's a 6 to the 8. So there's no way to fail. Passed. And then the Dire Wolves go away, and then I'm at my location. So the Gladen Fields were tapped, so they'll get permanently discarded for now. These guys are moving. I'm going to actually tap Frodo with Stealth to basically make it where enemies can't be played against me. I'm moving, so I'll draw a card. Now, technically, do I draw a card after I move to the location? So, just to track my movement real quick, I'm in the stones. So, Andrast is wilderness. Old Pukel Lands is wilderness. Indawaith is wilderness. Dunland is wilderness. And then Holland is wilderness, plus ruins and layers. And that's the max site path that you could possibly do. Okay, so we're going to test, but I can't get enemies because I'm stealthy. So we're going to go wilderness. -1, I passed. Wilderness. Passed. Wilderness for Indawaith. Passed. Wilderness for Dunland. Failed. Worn and famished. Each non-wizard character that is not in a haven, freehold, or border hold does not untap normally during his Untapped Phase. It's a long event. Such a character may instead make a roll, add in his mind stat if the result is greater than 12 he untaps. Cannot be duplicated. So that'll resolve when we get to the Untapped Phase. And then we get one last wilderness for Holland. Failed. Brigands, so it just gets discarded. And then we arrive at the ruins and layers. We fail. We get a cave drake, but it gets discarded because I'm stealthy. So then we arrive at Ost in Edel. And the stones goes away because I exhausted it. Ryan, I thought you could have 4 regions in between where you're at and where you're going. All right, so we're here. There's technically 3 wolf strikes. Ryan's saying yes, counting start and end, so maybe I couldn't go that far. I'm going to do it anyway because I already did it. Are you sure? Let me look. I'll get out my tiny 90s rulebook. Ryan saying you need to take the path. He mentioned taking the coast. Okay, go to Cardolan instead to Holland. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So Tharbad. So it'd be the same test. Ryan saying you could go Andrast, Coast, Cardolan, Rudar. Let me look at that. Andrast, Coast. So you can just take the coast. Cardolan, Rudar. There it is. To get to where? Yeah, so I think I can just go Andrast, Coast, Gardaland, Ostedel in Holland. I don't think I can get to Rivendell. Oh, Rivendell is in Rudar, so I could do that. I see what you're saying. We'll just do this because it lets me get to Ost. I haven't ever used the coast, but now I see why you would use the coast. It's a way to get around pretty quick, especially if we have a boat. All right, so we're here now. We will go ahead and take on this 3 wolf strike. I'm going to assign 1 to Gandalf, 1 to Aragorn, 1 to Gollum. So it's a 5. Aragorn's at a 6, -3 is a 3. He won't tap. He really can't fail this. So he succeeds. Same with Gandalf. Then we're going to go Gollum. He's going to go ahead and tap because he's a 2. And he succeeds. So now I can enter it. I'm going to go ahead and exhaust it. Play a precious gold ring. Did this wrong. That's fine. Play a precious gold ring on Gandalf. And then that'll end that business. So then we'll get to the end of the round. We have Worn and Famished still in play. So each non-wizard character that is not at a haven. So these are at haven, so they'll ready. Gandalf's a wizard. Does Golem count on Worn and Famished? He's got a 4 mind, so I think that works. So we're going to test 4 mind on Golem. I need 8 or more for him to untap. He does not untap. Frodo's a 5, so we're going to need 7 or more to untap. Actually, an 8 or more. He does not untap. Luke is saying, can you play this game in co-op, or is it versus type game in multiplayer? So it's kind of versus. You're playing at the same time on the same map, and you're throwing hazards at each other. But it's way less head-to-head than most head-to-head games. John said, how did you decide which region decks to put event cards? So a lot of event cards are keyed to certain sites. So like Worn and Famished. There were a couple cards I basically like that were generically bad for you. And so I went through my entire collection and found all the generic creatures or generic cards that I could play. And I divided those evenly among the different types. And then I looked at each deck as like, for creatures, what creatures could go in there, but then also the combination of the decks, which is like if you're messing around in certain areas, what are the odds of you hitting, certain cards that kind of work together in a way that's efficient? So I spent a lot of time deck building for each of them and there's only so many options. But anyways, I definitely kept all that in mind as I was building them. All right. Let me look at, can I move an item to an exhausted character? I can, right? All right, so I'm going to pass an item from Gandalf to Frodo. He's got Corruption of 1, but he's got +1 to his Corruption check, so he can't fail. He's going to pass a gold ring to Frodo. He's going to give it back. And then I'm going to play... We're actually going to move. No, I think I'm just going to wait where I'm at here. So we're going to go ahead and just hang out here. They're going to... They're actually going to come to me. So they're going to go wilderness, 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 and try to get to my location. And it's a -1, so I'll draw a card. Failed. Ooh, Dwar of Wa. Unique Nazgul may be played as a hazard creature with 1 or permanent event. If played as a permanent event, it will remain in play until tapped during the opponent's movement hazard phase. When tapped, Dwar of Wa becomes a short event and gives +1 prowess to all wolf, spider, and animal attacks until the end of the turn. So I'm going to put that into play as a permanent event, and because I can't play it as a creature, I'm going to resolve that, and it's in a deck with a bunch of those kind of creatures. The first time that I reveal a creature that matches that type. Ryan, Frodo was already exhausted from Worn and Famished. He's hungry. Then my second test is Wilderness, which I failed. Lure of Nature. So there's 2 Wilderness in, so I'm going to make 2 Corruption checks at a 3. Passed. Passed. And later I'll try to get rid of it. And that's my hazard limit, so that's the end of that. Then they make it from Lorien here, and I got a big old party. It's time to find that ring. It was basically go get all the rings and we'll test them all. So we're all here in the wilderness. Okay, so then into the round. Well, before we get to the end of the round, yeah, we'll actually wait. So yeah, we'll go to the end of the round. I'll discard one, draw one. Ready everything. During the organization phase, which we'll get to, I'm going to tap this character. I need a 4 or higher to discard it. Got it, barely. That's a cool card. I think Lure of Nature is a really good example of like the hazards are meant to slow you down and not actually get you. So like you only need a 4. Odds are you're going to pass that after a try or two. But it's really annoying in the meantime. So I'm going to go ahead and play Wizard's Test. Spell, wizard only. Only if you have a character in this company that has a gold ring. I actually have 2 of those. Play to test a gold ring. Make 2 rolls and choose 1 result to use the test. Wizard makes a corruption check modified by -1. So Gandalf's ability says all of his corruption checks are modified by a +1. Can tap to test a gold ring, so we're already testing. Aragorn has the Scroll of Isildur. When a gold ring is tested in a company with the Scroll of Isildur, the result of the roll is modified by +2. So I get to roll twice, and I get to also add 2. So a 6. I'm looking for an 8. And an 11, I'll take the 11, and it's a +2. So I'm testing this gold ring on Frodo, and it says discard precious gold ring when tested. If tested, make a roll to determine which ring card may be immediately played. So I got what I needed. Frodo is going to get the 1 ring. We're halfway home. I have a small deck with a couple ways to get victory here. I have Golem in play. It is time to make it happen. Andre saying, here it is. Yeah, now I just have to make my way to Mount Doom miraculously. So looking at it, man, we're still in the organization phase. So how many items can I move around? Pass as many as I want, just make corruption checks. Because essentially what I'd really like to do is, I already have the ring. I do not need whoever my party that's actually taking this thing to the house is to have like Scroll of Isildur as an example. So I kind of want to pass Scroll of Isildur to Glorfindel and park Glorfindel in a haven. Or honestly, Glorfindel needs to come dunk the ring. I was going to send Aragorn, but really, Glorfindel, I need Glorfindel to have, or someone to have an Elven Cloak. Do I don't, Ryan saying, I feel like the solo rules are great except for one thing. They don't put you under pressure like an opponent would as far as calling the council. Maybe there should be a round limit to council. So my general theory is that like I'm trying to win the game by the time I go through my deck twice, which is a 2-deck game. Or I'm trying to see what my score is at that point, to see how fast I move. Obviously, when they deck themselves, they could call the council on the first time through their deck based on those rules. So there is a little bit there. So it's probably good to know what your score is at that point. But interestingly, I'm at 1, 2, 3, 9, plus 4, 13, plus 4, 17, 22, 23, 12. I'm at 26. So I feel pretty okay at this point. Just about the reality of how many points I have at this moment before I've even made it to my deck once. So in terms of dunking, I mean, ultimately I want the smallest party I can have that still gets the job done. So I think realistically, because I could lose the game if I send Gandalf into Mount Doom, right? So I think the ideal for me is Aragorn with Gollum Glorfindel with an Elven Cloak and Frodo, because that puts me at 2.5. Technically puts me at 3. So I can still trigger Golem. I have the Elven Cloak to cancel, so I have Wilderness cancels like crazy. I have a bunch of scouts. Those are my best fighters. Let's see what this is. So let's pass some stuff around. I'm going to pass the Precious Gold Ring from Glorfindel over to Gandalf. Succeeded. I'm going to pass Scroll of Isildur over to Gandalf from Aragorn. Passed. I'm just loading Gandalf up. I should have done this first, but that's fine. I'll pass Golem. Gandalf gets a +1 corruption check. So he's at 4. He basically needs a 3. Golem is going to pass over to Aragorn. Got it. And then Annalina is going to pass the cloak over to Glorfindel. Got it. And then, let me see. Oh, Ryan saying you can't pass allies. Good to know. So instead, I'm going to pass Isildur over to Annalina. And I'm going to pass the gold ring to Aragorn, just in case I get the magic ring again. So then, really, it's going to end up becoming Glorfindel, Frodo, and Gandalf going with Gollum and Frodo to dunk the ring. All right, so they're all going to move to Lorien, which is going to be Wilderness, 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 Haven. Draw 2. And we're testing, needing a 9. Failed, Wilderness. River, Wilderness. Failed. Lost in the Wilderness. Wow. 1 additional hazard. You can play 1 additional hazard for each wilderness in the site path. So it's Wilderness, 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 Haven. So there's literally, I can do 2 extra hazards, which my hazard limit was already very high. But it's Wilderness, Wilderness, 1 last Wilderness. 7, I failed, so we get another Wilderness. Eyes of the Shadow. Environment may only be played if Gates of Morn is not in play. The hazard limit is increased by 2 for each moving company with a size of less than 4 that also contains a wizard or a non-ranger character with a mind of 6. Can't be duplicated, discard. Okay, so that doesn't really do anything. Both those are, that's all clear. And this gets discarded because it's gone. And now we're all at Lorien. And then I won't enter anything. We'll go back to the top of the round and untap. Doesn't, and so am I still 3 or under with Golem if I have Glorfindel, Gandalf, and Frodo? Is that correct? Well, I'm waiting on that answer. I'm going to map out my bounces down to Mount Doom. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ryan, I know you have to round up for hobbits, but for some reason, okay, so I can't use Golem when I'm at 3. So the Gandalf party, which I'm going to use this Kichi model to move. I'm still going to bring Golem. And all of them. Aragorn and Annalina are going to stay where they're at. So I'm going to move from Wilderness to Borderlands to Free Domains and Wilderness to go to Hineth Annuin. That's where I'm going to stop. The draw of 2. Okay. So it's Wilderness. We'll start there. Need a 9. Failed. Wolves. 3 strikes. They're at an 8. So we will cancel 1 with the cloak. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put the Elven Cloak instead because it cancels an attack against that person on Frodo. So we'll cancel the Frodo attack. Glorfindel will take 1 attack. Gandalf will take the other. Glorfindel won't tap. He's a 5, 2, and 8. Succeeded. Gandalf is a 6, 2, and 8. He will go ahead and tap. Can't lose Gandalf. Good thing I did. So we got past the wolves. And then the next thing we have are, so it's Wilderness, Borderlands. Failed. Let's see what we get. Abductor, 1 strike. Each non-wizard defending character wounded by it is discarded. I'll take the strike with Glorfindel. He'll go ahead and tap. And he passes. And then third, and if I get it, it's my final one. We're going to go Free Domains. Passed. Then we're going to go Wilderness. Pass. Then we're going to go with the site icon, which is a border hold. Fail. So border hold is this one. Ryan's saying tap Dwar. I did hit a wolf, so I'll tap Dwar. And he's a +1, so it's still fine. Thanks for that catch, Ryan. All right. Muster disperses. Affects a faction already in play. So if I had a faction in play, it could mess with it. I don't have a faction in play, so that's the end of it. Then I arrive at Hineth Annuin. So now I'm just hanging out. End of the round, I'll discard down to 5. And we'll start back at the top. All right, well, now is the time, my friends. So I'm in Hineth Annuin. And Hineth Annuin. When I listened to the books, I was like, I need to remember how to say these appropriately. I don't. So is there some special rule too where I have to stop at one of these 3 locations in the middle before I get to Imlad Morgul, or when I'm in Imlad Morgul? So there's basically Minas Morgul, Shelob's Lair, and Cirith Ungol. Hinneth Anun. I'll take it. And Dwar goes away. Because technically, if I don't, it's Wilderness, Shadowlands, Dark Domains, Shadowholds. And then we're at Mount Doom. Let me see if I even have Mount Doom location. I feel like that's the kind of card they would make rare, and it would be very frustrating to get. Can you pull up Mount Doom, Bryce? Mr. Nerd Adventure says, I totally need this game, and I didn't even know I did. That's how I felt when I started diving in. The art on these cards, the experience that it offers. Is that Mount Doom, Bryce? Yeah. Let me pull it up. I'm going to have to buy that. Okay, wow. Mount Doom looks cool. Special, any company site moving to Mount Doom has its hazard limit modified by +2. And hazard creatures may always be played keyed to the site regardless of any other cards played. And, oh my goodness, it's a 9? Oh no, that's a 6. Your opponent draws 6? Ryan's saying it's Wilderness, Dark Domains, Dark Domains. How do you figure? Because Imlad Morgul to me looks like it's a Shadowlands. Ryan saying Athelion, Imlad Morgul, Gorgoroth. So it definitely is Athelion. Imlad Morgul to me, that icon is a Shadowland. Am I wrong? And then Gorgoroth to me looks like a Dark Domain. And then Mount Doom is obviously a Shadowhold. Ryan said, do we have the region card for Imlad Morgul, Bryce? IMLAD? MORGUL. I can't see it, Ryan. You're going to have to tell me. Ryan saying my map might be wrong. Yeah, so I think, unless my map's wrong, we're going to go Wilderness, Shadowlands, Dark Domains, Darkhold. No, not Darkhold. Shadowholds. So, Mount Doom is where we're trying to get. I draw 2. And let me pull up Mount Doom again. It's really awesome. So, like, if you go to Mount Doom, your opponent gets to draw 6 cards, and then they just get to try to lay you out. But that's really not that bad. All right. Let's start with Wilderness. 6, I fail, so I'll get a Wilderness. It's a Wargs. We're going to go ahead and cancel 1, assign 1 to Frodo and cancel it. And then we'll assign 1 to Glorfindel, and he won't exhaust, so it's going to be a 5 to a 9. Got it. So we'll get rid of the Wargs. Then we're going to get the Shadowlands. Now, actually, they draw 6, so I'm -6, which means I have to take every card. That's what that means. So I'm not even going to roll anymore. I'm just going to take it. Card number 2, and I can only take 3. Oh, it's +2 because of Mount Doom, right? Yeah, +2. So I can take 5, and I'm going to take all of them. So next we get the top Shadowlands card. Let's go ahead and just shuffle up a bunch of the decks that I haven't used so far because they're that awful for you. Oh man, I remember putting some really bad cards in these as well. That is pretty cool, especially in the solo mode. That basically when you're going to Mount Doom, if you're not, you're just going to take all the cards, whatever it looks like. All right. Call of Home. Playable on a non-wizard character that is not bearer of the One Ring. So it's going to have to be Glorfindel. Must make a roll. Return the character player's hand to the result, plus unused general influence is less than 10. So let's see what I'm at right now. Gandalf is controlling Glorfindel, which makes Frodo a 5. Annalina is being controlled by Aragorn. So I'm at 14. I have 6 unused general plus a roll. And I need a 4. Got it. That would have been hilarious. Next is this icon, Dark Domains. You don't see this one often. Let me find it. This is one of the worst stacks. Dark Domains. Thomas said these should be bad cards. Yeah, at the wrong time, that Call of Home could just ruin you. Like if I had another character on the board right now, and Glorfindel just gets discarded, that would be a problem for me. Let's see what we get. Worn and Famished. Each non-wizard character that is not at a Haven, Freeholder, Borderhold does not untap normally. It's a long event, so that'll stay in play. And then we get the last card, which is the Mount Doom card. Shadow Hold? Is that right? Yes. Which is this stack. Nope, wrong card. Half these. Yeah, this is it. Stirring Bones. That's not that scary. Undead, 2 strikes, 2 wilderness, can't be played, etc. So we'll assign 1 strike to Glorfindel, 1 to Gandalf, and we'll go ahead and exhaust Glorfindel. Gandalf still can, because Gandalf is at 10. Glorfindel's an 8, so he can control him. So I succeed, and then Gandalf will block the other one. Barely succeeded. That could have cost me the game if I had missed. So I defeat this. I score the point. I arrive at Mount Doom. I'm going to use this as Mount Doom because I don't have a Mount Doom copy. And then I believe I'm in the sight phase, and I can play this card, which is Golem's Fate, which I happen to have in my hand. Unique, only playable with One Ring and Golem are both at Mount Doom during the sight phase. The One Ring is destroyed, and its bearer's player wins. So I'm going to rip this One Ring in half. I win the game. I believe that all checks out and works. I want to look at this Dark Domain stack and make sure it's nasty, because I feel like if I'm going to test the Dunk deck against this, Dark Domains and whatever Mount Doom is, which is that symbol, Shadow Holds has to be bringing the heat. So I'm going to pull some of these up, Bryce, and we'll see how bad it is or isn't. Foul Fumes. Each moving company that has Shadow Land or Dark Domain in its site path must return to its site of origin unless it contains a ranger. That's a nice play. Additionally, if Doors and Knights in play, we get Orc Guard. It's a casual 5 strikes. Some of these things I need to take out, like River. Oh, you know what? Actually, River's really good. Because if you hit a River, you couldn't do anything during the sight phase. You just have to hang out at Mount Doom. Mouth of Sauron, I've heard that guy's good. Maybe played as a hazard creature with 1 strike or a short event. If played as a short event, bring any hazard card from your discard pile back into your hand. So it's good for you, but he's got a big 13 strike. William, Muster disperses. Can get rid of one of your factions, I guess. I think I'm going to make this deck nastier. Seized by Terror. Oh man, Seized by Terror is a wrecking card. Yeah, I want to make sure this entire stack just wrecks you. I feel like I'm going to load this up with Nazgul. Because, like, I have Kamal, the Easterling. He's an 18-8. I do have a lot of Nazgul in here, so it could go very badly. But I want to make sure that when you're hitting these cards, it's feeling bad. Ryan Roper saying, your hazard decks need more dragons. I have a decent number of anywhere a dragon can go is where I put a dragon. But I agree. Dragon hunts. Yeah. I'll have to look. I'm going to tweak. This is only the second time I've ever played against this deck. I think the structure of what's working is really good. Balancing and tweaking the decks is what I'll be able to do in time. But in general, I mean, at worst, I played Skytear solo yesterday. And I was really impressed, honestly, with how that went. But the reality of, like, being able to play a game without an opponent is pretty critical. And, like, even if it just largely gives you the feel of how that game goes, which I think this is accomplishing, is what I set out to do. A ring dunking deck is a very specific... I'm going to go ahead and flip to full screen real quick. But anyways, mimicking some sort of feel like you're playing against an opponent. The ring dunk deck is very linear. It's very specific. So I need to make sure that the decks work in such a way to make that a challenge to do, while also still being playable in general against whatever other decks I'm doing. When I played the Aragorn Arwen deck last time against it, it was great. It told a really great story. It challenged me. But you start realizing the more you play, even when you're playing heads up, the hazards are really more about slowing your opponent down than it is stopping them. And so I feel like on average I'm hitting more hazards than I would against a live opponent because there's only so many hazard cards in your deck and they're not always going to key to the right regions. So it's a nice balance of like what's going on, but it definitely is cool to see this deck in play and it's doing exactly what I set out to do. Ryan Rober saying, I feel like more hazards than increased corruption or forced corruption checks could be generally good. Yeah, because those are generally not good for you, basically, is why I think that could work, which is like you're just kind of generically making life harder for people. For sure. And I think that's the structure of what's going on here is not, I don't feel like needs any massive changes. I really like the hazard being modified by how much your opponent would be drawing, basically rolling for each of those hazards, and it's variable on whether you're going to get enemies or how many and whatnot. There were a couple moments where like a test could have gone wrong for me and it would have been really bad. I mean, I lost Sam early, so I guess one test did go pretty bad for me. Ryan Robert, that makes sense. Saying if you want a really hard mode, you could just start with Gates of Night and play. Yeah, because there are hazard cards that reference if Gates of Night is in play. So I like that. I like that a lot, actually. I'll definitely be looking and tweaking. I think the other thing is just looking through the decks. Having used it now, at first it was kind of like just made big stacks of everything that could go in a specific deck and then started whittling down. But now I think I have enough experience that I could actually start tweaking. So I'm excited. What up, Brian? Just made it back. Did the Dunkening happen? It happened. It sure did. Made it to Mount Doom and was able to dunk the ring with... I think of the two cards that you can dunk with, the one I played is way easier. I didn't really realize that until it was happening. today. Let me find it. Smoke Rings was really good, by the way. So there's Cracks of Doom, which I think is the harder of the two. And then Golem's Fate. Golem's Fate seems way easier to pull off than Cracks of Fate. Cracks of Doom. Cracks of Fate. I'm mixing the card names. For sure. I'm pulling out the cards that I pulled from my sideboard. I think I had Wizard's Test my sideboard because it's not good until Gandalf comes in play, whereas Test of Form just generically works. So yeah, that was a good time. If you're new, I'm curious if you were following along. Other people were saying they've used. Yeah, Ryan saying I dunked Golem. That's true. They've used this format, which is really cool. It's amazing that other people are actually trying this. So if you have any thoughts or feedback, feel free to hit me up. One way you can do that, we have a platform called Community where we text. We send updates about specific games, like we updated that we were going to be doing Lord of the Rings this morning. But you could just text with Steven and I in that. If you are playing the Middle Earth CCG, feel free to text. I'd love to hear about it, and I'd love to know if you're playing the solo mode specifically, how it's going for you, and if you have any feedback or thoughts on what to change, that'd be really cool. Jacob saying, I wasn't here for a couple months. What happened here and why Ozzy Osbourne is talking about Lord of the Rings? What up, Jacob? Just playing Middle Earth CCG. It's an old 90s CCG, and I just blew up the ring or destroyed it or threw it into the fire of Mount Doom. Hold on, I got a note coming in. All right, hey, this has been great. I had a great time. Thank you all for being here and for the kind words throughout. Ryan, lots of rules help. Very much appreciated. I'm going to click some buttons and look past the screen. And then we're going to roll out. If you haven't been with us for very long, we do throwbacks on Thursday. We put older games that we either used to play or wanted to play. And it's a good time. So we'll be back next week with some more throwbacks. And we're not streaming tomorrow. We typically have been streaming 5 days a week. Steven's gone, so making it a little bit shorter of a week. Andre, of course, happy to be here. Everyone who's stuck with us this whole time and been watching all throughout today. Appreciate you being here. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you guys next week. We'll be live all next week. Should be returning Monday with Marvel Monday again, and then, of course, throwing back on Thursday. So stay safe. We'll catch you next time.